This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. What a week of NBA basketball. First week of NBA 2025-26 season, and my God, it did not disappoint. And I know everybody is just like on pins and needles, ready to hear our perspective of the big news that took place off the court, as much as we should be focusing our attention on some quality games that were being played within this first week of the NBA. I know that we'd love for that to be the full focus of our attention. But as always, man, we got to speak on what is in front of us and what is going on in the current climate. And as always, man, nobody I would rather be doing that with than my brother from another mother, my man, 50 grand. www.shawsports.net, big PNC, my brother, Mr. Warren Shaw. Repping down in FTL. What's good, my brother? The clink that we heard from around the world taking place. But again, let it not be said, man. I applaud all of the NBA players. I applaud the league. Everybody still stayed fixated and focused at the task at hand, which is having quality games of competitive basketball being played despite what was happening off the court. And I just want to make sure that part of it has been known before we get into our digs, brother.
Yeah, I mean, I won't take us too far off tangent here, but yeah, the NBA season obviously is back upon us. We're so excited about that here in the baseline. Year whatever it is, like we just continue to keep rolling. But there was some things that were peculiar on day 3 of the NBA season, but to know that the NBA on NBC was back and that came off without proverbial hitch, and like they're really focusing on basketball content or breaking down plays. Amazon launched their situation inside the NBA, moved over to ESPN. So even how we covered the game, that really was, I think, was supposed to be the primary focus in addition to the actual games themselves, getting overtime games like in the first, there was a lot of really great things here, some great debuts. So I'm going to try to keep it as positive as possible here, but we do have some things to kind of get into with the off the court stuff. And then obviously, the rest of our show here too, where we always, as you say, give them the butter goods, but a lot happened here this first week.
Yeah, a lot. Real quick, Shaw, I want to highlight to your point about, what were your thoughts about as far as the overall presentation, the layout that took place for the first week of the NBA? Me personally, I have to say I was actually impressed. I came in with a lot of skepticism because I think sometimes when new networks are being gifted a great opportunity for them to stand out, they sometimes go a little over the top. They get a little too cheesy, and it's easy to swipe it under the rug because you've got a lot of money already vested in it. So what's throwing a few more dollars towards it? Because you've already convinced everybody that you are going to be the go-to source for watching these games, prime time, and everything else that's going on. And I speak more too about the quality of how it's being delivered and what your overall intent and message is, because we do the same thing when it comes to the NFL. So when certain networks who haven't really been involved in that space are trying to present it in this entertainment fashion, throwing all kinds of music artists and, kind of making it seem like it's something with like not Dancing with the Stars, but like all of those reality star show kind of, manifestation. I can't stand that. Like, I'm about the sports. I'm about the quality of the sports, the delivery of the sports, the people that you're putting that's commenting on the sports, and what's being produced and rolled out for us to continue enjoying it and wanting more of it. And I have to say, I'm very impressed that while NBC could have went full on nostalgic and kind of like not recognize the moment that we are in a completely different generation of how the game should be absorbed and viewed, they really did a good job of balancing it. They reminded people of where NBC was at that time when they were involved in the NBA, but they're also kind of leaning us a little bit more into what the future can look like with them at the helm. And I appreciate that, because they could have went either side too much and it would have gone sideways real quick.
I mean, I think you set it up and summed it up perfectly. The NBC and Peacock understood their proverbial assignment. Like, we've got to try to reignite the interest of those who remember us from X amount of years ago and then try to introduce ourselves to those who've never known that we've covered the sport before. And I think, again, the balance that we wanted to see, and I saw a bunch of our contemporaries on X and social media platforms say, hey, man, this is really cool. Like this, this brings us back with
they're
kind of a
tough
new
to
school
sell on
flavor.
that. Yeah.
Right. And then the notion, again, that they're focusing, as you alluded to the sport, right? I love kind of the nerdy stuff and player breakdowns and things of that nature. I'd even kind of jump ahead, like Donis has them, on the Amazon broadcast, he's breaking down plays for like the Knicks were running and the Celtics. I was like, man, this is great. Like, I like this type of stuff. That's what Legler does on ESPN on the regular basis. And I think when others were trying to, maybe it fell a little bit short, or wasn't maybe as in depth as somebody like maybe you or I might enjoy. But to air quote, I hate this word, the terminology, but to the casuals, it was fine. But they're doing a good job across. I think there's something for every generation of NBA fan right now, with all the networks that have been kind of awarded, as you alluded to, the contract to broadcast NBA games this season.
Absolutely. And so before we obviously get into our main topic of conversation, which is clearly about the scandal that has recently erupted and rocked the NBA and sports world in and of itself, the last thing I want to say, and it's to highlight what you were just saying, Shaw, I really like the fact that they allowed the players to really, like, I'm of the mindset, like, I don't mind players giving us stories and sharing their telltales and tell-alls, and you can do that on your podcast, you can do it but when you're in front of the TV, I think a lot of people sometimes don't understand what you've spent that many years playing the game of basketball and understanding the nuances, where you may not even be a coach, but you're coaching us. And I often feel that sometimes the major networks, again, lean more to the entertainment side than learning about the game of basketball and the understanding of things when those opportunities present itself. So we know what to look for in the second half of the game. We know what to look for in the second quarter of a game. And the fact that they're allowing some of those guys that have put their blood, sweat, and tears and spent so many years, won championships or whatever, you're giving them a space for them to actually help teach us what the game of basketball should mean to us in those moments, rather than playing up to the, quote unquote, production of what a NBA game being called. I really do appreciate that. I don't know if that's going to last, but I hope that that's something that is injected and embedded on a consistent basis, because that to me tends to miss a lot. We try to make players become personalities when the personality of the player is what we actually want. And that's what I'm hoping we see more so with those guys, because we weren't seeing it with the previous people that they were, quote unquote, working for. And again,
I think a lot of it is how the network decided that they wanted to be covered. And because we have some of these guys, a lot of these are retreads. They're moved around. They jumped from network to these newer broadcasts. And like, hey, you know what? We're going to portray the game in this form or fashion now. So again, in the first week, so far, so good. Let's hope it continues and we don't get kind of like the familiar tropes that kind of like, wore us down to dust, the last, 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. In a few moments, we'll be getting into the big scandal that has taken place with the FBI's involvement, arresting indictments on certain NBA players and coaches. We'll definitely get into that. And then we also got a pretty interesting segment, Do It or Don't. Doing it or not doing it. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to our boy LL Cool J, because he was always doing
shout out to Marlo from The Wire, bro. Marlo from The Wire. Do it or don't.
That too. There's an appreciation with that. So we got a great show on tap, and of course we appreciate everybody for hopping on board with us this week. As always, be sure to get my man Shaw at The Warren Shaw. You can get at me at Game Face Leader, show's Twitter handle, NBA Baseline, available on all the major platforms. You know where to find us. You can go to www.thebaselinenba.com to not only check this episode, but also all of the episodes that we've got archived for your listening pleasure. When you see us on the YouTube channel and you find us with the blue and white logo down in the lower left-hand corner, that means we are rocking with the 19 Media Group family. So be sure to go to www.19mediagroup.com to not only check us, but also the family of great content creators that be laying it down. 19 Media Group be running these content streets, man. So whatever your feel is for this week, just know that 19 Media Group has got you. We have some great people putting on some great shows, man. So don't miss out. Go to www.19mediagroup.com. Coming up, Sean and I'll get right into the scandal that is rocking the NBA at the moment. But before we do that, It is Raycon's anniversary, and this message is sponsored by Raycon. And what better way to celebrate than with a deal on the Everyday Earbuds Classic? They are now 20% off. So it is the perfect time to get your hands on these. I'm saying we're getting around the holiday season. I know you got somebody in your family that's be rocking those old earbuds looking, they started white, now they're looking gray. It's time for you to upgrade them, man. Get the Raycon Everyday Earbuds Classic. Reliable, super comfy, and easy to take anywhere, and you will see why they are a fan favorite since day one. The Everyday Earbuds Classics are loaded with upgrades, active noise cancellation, multi-point connectivity, so you can pair with 2 devices at once, and an ergonomic fit that actually stays put no matter what you're doing. Over 3 million customers already love Raycons, and they come with a 30-day happiness guarantee. So if you don't love them, returns are easy, so you have nothing to lose. The Baseline boys love their Raycons, and we believe you will too. Go to buyraycon.com/baseline to get 20% off the Everyday Earbuds Classic. That's buyraycon.com/baseline to get 20% off. Coming up, Sean and I get right into the heart of things. Don't miss it here on the Baseline. All right, time now for the breakdown. Callie Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. And as we said earlier, obviously we would love to be in a space where all we could be talking about was some of the exciting games that were played so far in the first couple of games of the NBA season. So much exciting basketball, prime time on a new network, basketball all over the place. But unfortunately, the game has been dealt with a serious blow regarding the FBI investigation and the indictments involving NBA gambling and the scandals that are ultimately rocking our space. And they're related to specifically 2 types of operations that the FBI has looking into what's been taking place regarding NBA gambling. One is called Operation Royal Flush, and the other one is called Operation Nothing to Bet. And basically, just to kind of give you a background of it, the FBI basically looked into 2 gambling-related investigations, and one are distinguishably different from the other. One in relation to illegal sports betting under user insider info, which is Nothing But Bet. That's Operation Nothing But Bet. And then the other one is rigged underground poker games that are tied to organized crime, in which that one is called Operation Royal Flush. So in a nutshell, these are simultaneous investigations that are taking place in which the FBI and the Department of Justice felt it necessary that this was the time now to basically lay the smackdown and go out and get those who are involved in that situation. Current NBA player Terry Rozier from the Miami Heat and head coach Chauncey Billups were both arrested a couple of nights into the NBA season as part of these investigations. Now, the scale of the investigation has led to over 30 individuals across 11 states. Many were charged with multiple indictments of wire fraud, money laundering, illegal gambling, and extortion. And then obviously the big, caveat to all of this is that there are possible ties or alleged ties to criminal organizations, to enterprise criminal organizations. So in a nutshell, Shaw, we wake up thinking the NBA is all good, we're all focused on games, and then we find out that a current NBA player has been arrested, a head coach for the Portland Trailblazers, and Chauncey Billups, a NBA Hall of Famer, Chauncey Billups, has been arrested. Want to get your perspective of what all of this means, where this could possibly go, and what does this actually say about where we are with the federal government and with major sports, and where we are with betting and gambling and everything like that, and what are our pain points in understanding what this could all possibly mean moving forward.
I could get on a very long soapbox about what I'm seeing, even in for youth. Like, there's high school teenagers who are betting on games, and more so at the NBA level or whatever. But the fact that they're even thinking about betting at this age is just kind of how our culture has just kind of naturally shifted. And as the NBA has adopted all these partners, it's just become really, really just more of the norm. And now, though, we're in the almost Pete Rose-ish style of for basketball, where players are really not even betting on themselves. And as you alluded to and kind of laid out, information is being shared with other betting agencies about what's going on with the team, in essence, to help move the line, in essence, to make money. Like that is, I'm not going to get into much more of that. It's just kind of like when I look at it from like a 30,000 foot view, my eyes are just truly wide open as to how the world has shifted in its acceptance of betting in general. Now, to the two main people who were mentioned who are still prominent in today's NBA, so to speak, while Damon Jones, him being the ringleader of some of this,
I forgot to mention him too. Yeah,
some choice words, but I'll leave that out for now. But for the Portland Trailblazers, like what a effing distraction! Like this is a team that a lot of people have high hopes for. Feel like they have a great defensive identity because of what Billups brings and how he's been able to command and influence some of those young guys. But if he's involved in stuff like this, truly as a Hall of Famer, this is a blemish. And it's not. I don't think Chauncey's a bad guy. He's clearly made a mistake here, but this is just obviously you wouldn't want this to happen at any time. But I think as the Portland Trailblazers are trying to ascend, in a very, very difficult Western Conference, to have your head coach involved in something like this for however long he's been involved in it is just, it's devastating to that locker room, in a way that I don't know. I'm glad they have veterans in there like Drew Holiday and some others who can maybe help try to stem the proverbial tide. Tiago Splitter, I guess, is going to be the interim head coach for the foreseeable future.
You know that like what, maybe some 10 years ago, we mentioned Tiago Splitter's name as a player, and he's now been elevated to a head coach, or he's a head coach to interim head coach.
Yeah,
I probably see him going to be the head coach, period.
Right. Because a lot of people think that Chauncey's not going to be able to come back from this. Definitely not this year, and maybe not ever. Actually,
and if you're the Portland Trailblazers, I can't see you wanting to come back, like bringing him back for any of this.
And you just don't want to see that. So I'm going to wrap it up because there's a lot of ways in this can go. But then Terry Rozier, he's obviously struggled in the last couple of years, especially since being traded from Charlotte to Miami. I just got to wait to see what all the investigations ultimately reveal. But to be picked up by the FBI, and something that my wife says all the time, especially when we're watching like TV or whatever the case to be, when the FBI is coming, like they're not coming because they don't know, they're coming because they do know. And it's not like if the regular law enforcement comes and they're maybe trying to get you on some circumstantial stuff. FBI, they build cases for weeks, months, years before they go and make action. So this seems like truly actionable offenses that have a lot of merit that need to be taken very seriously. And the next thing is now, how does Adam Silver respond, or just kind of, obviously he has to let the FBI do what they need to do, but does this put a blemish on the idea of how important betting is becoming within the NBA and other sports?
So, okay, man, there's so many different things. We can actually have our own dedicated show highlighting a lot of things that I'm not going to speak to what I believe is the politicalization of utilizing a major sports entity to highlight an agenda that is taking place. That's another conversation, another argument for another day. I feel bad in a way for Adam Silver, because I don't know whether or not you heard him when he was being interviewed as all of that was going down. He was on NBC or Peacock. I can't remember which network, which streaming platform he was, but they asked him, and he said, "I'm a little surprised by this because we had been working in concert, because this has been something that's been going on for like the last 2 years. It's not like Terry Rozier's name just is out of nowhere. He has always been in there." He's like, "But from where our findings were, we did not believe that Terry Rozier committed any egregious acts or crimes." So for the FBI to then turn around and go ahead and still arrest this dude tells me that the FBI wasn't working in concert with the NBA. And if the FBI has broad-reaching powers in how they go about doing their investigations, They could have given a heads up on what was really taking place rather than doing what they did. Again, another argument for another day. It does not mitigate whether or not there are actual illegal activities that did take place on Terry Rozier's behalf. And then when you add on top of it the circumstances regarding Chauncey Billups and Damon Jones, again, it's a stain on the NBA because it makes you wonder whether or not they are actually they're doing their due diligence as much as they say that they are. It's almost like putting onus back on them saying, are you really doing what you're doing? Because we did this with the NFL too, with domestic violence investigations and, illegal activities that certain players were committing. I want to go back to something that you were talking about, though, Shaw, about where we are in this climate of sports and sports betting and gambling. How long do you think it took before we actually found out that Michael Jordan was a gambler? We never, throughout the course of the time of his dominance, it wasn't up until ultimately, I think it was something either leaked or something involving his dad, that we found out how deep it was about Michael Jordan gambling. And at that time, that was taboo, right? Like, what are we talking about? Like professional athletes going out there gambling, right? Like doing the stuff that we would watch, all of these movies that were created on the underground scene and gambling. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's Harlem Nights or freaking Goodfellas, all of that felt like it was taboo. That is a part of the fabric of everyday people. People go out there gambling all the time, but it's magnified with all this much money going out there and stuff. And I feel like the problem is to what lengths these guys are going about doing what they do. And I think now we're beginning to see what that all means, right? Like if Damon Jones is actually taking that information and going out there and using it to go out there and gamble and bet, that is a far bigger problem. That is a far sorted problem that obviously needs to be addressed, not just by the NBA, but by the organizations, right? Like you cannot tell me if you're the Portland Trailblazers that you're not keeping tabs on the guy who's supposed to be coaching up your next generation of stars, and he's going out there doing these kind of things that are going on. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like that just speaks to a much broader conversation that has to be had, that while, yes, it's a stain on the NBA, it's also a stain on the organizations, and it's a stain on the players themselves if they are doing these things. Like, what are we talking about now? It's just, it's really bad. I'm just hoping that when this is all said and done, you put away a lot of the bravado, the fronting that goes on in front of the cameras, and we really get at the heart of, were these guys doing things that are so egregious, so bad, that it's going to take years before we actually have, a level of stability in our trust in the way these things are not just being policed, but also being regulated, because that can't go on. Like, no matter what you do, all the way down to the top, down to the bottom, like that can't go on. That cannot be tolerated.
Well, what I'm afraid of is that, maybe we're, as a society, more willfully ignorant to the facts that these things are happening, because other people are just like, hey, they're gambling on planes all the time. And even go back to the latest Netflix special, Jabari Smith and Gilbert Arenas, and why Gilbert was bringing guns and stuff like that too. It all stemmed from a gambling debt in conversations. Like, players are consistently gambling, but it's just hopeful. Oh, well, you're not gambling on your game, right? You're not gambling on your own, as prop bets became more prevalent in today's society, and to kind of understand, because as the gambling culture has changed, like, I haven't really been kept up because I'm not a gambler, right? But I was like, well, I had to learn what a prop was X amount of years ago. I mean, I understand it. But I was like, what does that mean now? Oh, we're not just betting the odds and you're going to win by X amount of points. Now you can bet this guy's going to have X amount of assists, X amount of turnovers. Like, there's just so many ways for this to have gone left and wrong. But I think also knowing that with the FBI investigation, hopefully for those who haven't been caught yet, because now I think we know this is probably deeper and more prevalent than we would even think it is. And there could be team officials, and it could be, the equipment manager is like, hey, you know what? This guy's ankle's not looking too good. I am hearing he's not going to play. And then they said, I mean, you can't control it all. Like, I that would be ignorant to think that you could. But if you are truly affiliated with the team, and are doing this type of behavior like that, it just has to stop. And
It,
Adam Silver and company, they have a very, very tall task ahead of them.
they do. But to your point, Shaw, I was hoping more so that, and again, I think for there to be a legitimacy in what is taking place, I am hoping that there is more meat on the bone regarding Operation Royal Flush than Operation Nothing But Bet. Because that to me is something where even if the federal government is going to basically put their thumb on the scale, it still ultimately has to go back to how the NBA works with the NBPA, right? About figuring out a way to regulate that aspect of it so that it's not players who are getting perp walked out there, right? At the same time, however, what we're talking about with Operation Royal Flush is something far more sorted, because then what that is saying is there are people who have deeper pockets, deeper connections, dangerous connections. And we're saying that this guy is a part of it. We don't know if he's a part of it willingly or if he's being extorted, but if he's being a part of it, there are no there's no safeguards, because now we're probably talking about people who are a part of dangerous activities, influencing things that we have no control or outcome over. And I think in those regards, yes, I would definitely want the FBI and any other federal agency that is supposed to be policing those matters stepping in to make sure that the laws are being enforced properly and that the right people are being investigated and the right people are being arrested. What I don't want this to be is something that is basically making it sound like NBA is making money hand over fist, and because the federal government is not getting a piece of the pie, we're going to basically we're going to smear them all over the place because they allowed all of this stuff going on. The stuff that certain players, like what's going on with Chauncey Billups, that to me is far more dangerous than what was going on with Terry Rozier or what's going on with Damon Jones, right? Like that's the kind of stuff that, yes, the league should be involved in, should basically step in, lean into, work with the unions. You know what I'm saying? The managers association, the managers union, head coaches union should be stepping in on this, because they don't want any of their other head coaches who are involved in something like this, like what happened to Chauncey Billups, happening to him. So everybody collectively needs to come together and have a say and make sure that these things are being properly assessed and are reviewed and audited. But at the same time, what we're talking about with federal crimes, like that should not be overlooked either. And I just hope that for all of this effort, this doesn't blur the lines and the right things need to happen in place to assure that moving forward, we're not going to have what's happening, because I see two distinct paths happening here, but yet they're all being pointed at, quote unquote, the NBA as being, you know what I'm saying, the central part of what's manifested here. And I think people have to be careful with that, because there's not much that can be done when you're talking about federal crimes being committed by people who are far more above and beyond even what the league can do in that situation.
I'll close by saying this. The Players Association is obviously trying to stand behind, their guy, I guess in this case right now, Terry Rozier, and obviously not forgetting about Michael Porter Jr.'s brother last year, the stuff that too. But in a statement, the PA said, the integrity of the game is paramount to NBA players, but so is the presumption of innocence. And both are hindered when player popularity is being misused to gain attention. We will ensure our members are protected and afforded their due process rights through this process. So, I don't think, while Terry Rozier is a nice player and somebody who I've publicly even rooted for, I don't think his name is is it being used to garner attention in this. He just happens to be the person who was involved in the situation. So like to me, that it reads a little funny in how the PA, but again, the PA's got it's a bunch of lawyers, and they gotta protect the integrity, if you will, of their organization and the players in essence that they represent. But it's not like this thing named LeBron or Luka or somebody of a higher pedigree, so to speak, when in terms of popularity it comes to NBA culture. It's something we got to continue to watch. I'm really, really sad, again, for the Portland Trailblazers. Hopefully they'll be able to triage this and still continue on a path of success that a lot of us predicted for them this year. Rozier was dubious at best to be within the Miami Heat lineup and, rotation on a regular basis. But still, there's other things here that are probably even more important than basketball that need to be sorted out.
Well, and I think the sad thing to your point, Shaw, and I'll leave it with this as well too, is the situation with Damon Jones, and then trying to leak out or mention that his relationship with LeBron James, also has elevated this, and again, I just don't like the idea of names being thrown out there without there being proper context. And listen, I'm a proponent of I want to be a proponent of law and order. You know what I mean? Like I want to make sure that that those are actually who are officers who are out there putting their life on the line. I don't want them to be out there having to defend the perception of people who are triggering something that feels like could be in a political agenda when it should be with the actual intent of saying that we are trying to ensure the safety of our citizens and things of that nature. It doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor. And that's the thing that I fear, that if this is nothing but smoking mirrors and there's no meat on the bone to this, we've basically have marginalized not just the league that people invest, put money into, people have jobs into, and all that other stuff. But we also have, we've also have deteriorated the integrity of an institution that is part of what we have to defend a whole nation in. Like, in other words, I'm hoping that the FBI is full-throated in their efforts of what they did to lay this all out. It better look as good as what happened these last 72 hours. Because if it isn't, then again, another blow has been stricken on the integrity of something that we have to go back and we repair. And I know that is something that Adam Silver is conscious about regarding the NBA. He doesn't want to spend more time repairing something that didn't need to be repaired because there's 3 or 4 individuals, quote unquote, bad apples of the bunch, who don't appreciate what the league has afforded these guys the opportunity to do. And so that's the reason why I'm hoping everyone who now understands that when this has happened moving forward, everybody has to be on the same page, right? Like, this can't be another situation where someone knows more about the other thing and now is getting blindsided by this. Like, everybody now needs to be fully in the know about what's going on in order for the proper steps, to be taken so that we root out all of this stuff and we figure out a way to regulate this in a proper manner.
Yeah, well said. So let's continue to stay tuned here and let the FBI and officials do what they need to do, and Adam Silver hopefully get the league trending in the right direction.
Absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, who's doing it, who's not doing it. We're going to talk about some guys, man, who have pivotal seasons ahead of them. Have they started out with the right message about where they see this season going for them? You not want to miss it here on The Baseline.
You've earned this. Now it's time to embark on your own personal adventure. Book your vacation with Exquisite Travel and Tours today. Explore the world and discover yourself.
We're back. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. Time for our segment, Doing It or Not Doing It. And if you're doing it, are you doing it well? Are you doing it like
it's do it? It's do it or don't. Like, you want to go, you want to get
do it or don't. I like the doing it well. Are they doing it or not doing it well? Okay, do it or don't. Do it or don't.
All right. So you're on the you're on the LO train. I'm on the Marlo train from The Wire. That's what I'm on. Like, do it or don't. I got somewhere to be. That's what it is. I'm tired of waiting on some of these dudes to perform to the level that we think they can perform. But we can thread the needle on both.
I'm noticing though, man, you got a little Marlon look to you, a Marlo look to you today. Listen, shout out to our man Jamie Hector.
I don't need those struggles in my life.
Hey, Jamie Hector was not the perfect Marlo Stanfield.
He was.
My God.
Yeah,
he was. Great actor.
Shout out if you haven't caught The Wire, man. Like, one of the best shows on TV ever.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Shaw. So let's get into it. These are guys that, to what you had alluded to, this is a critical season for a couple of the players that we're going to be talking about here. And, we'll even highlight, what they've done already so far this season to kind of speak to that. But given contracts that they may have had or contracts they're looking for, it's going to be important to see what kind of contributions they're going to be making and where they're going to fit in the grand scheme of things come this upcoming NBA offseason as well, too. And it's good to talk about ahead of time because it means that our people need to keep an eye on them and see what they're doing at the early outset for this NBA season.
Yeah, I think we have a list of guys here who are either in, as you alluded to, contract years. Some have a significant body of work, and maybe we just know who they are already. But I'm just kind of keeping my eye on some of these dudes to say, you know what, this could be truly a pivotal year where you ascend, or maybe you kind of go into the phantom zone rather. And that doesn't necessarily mean you'll be out of the league. But I think for the first guy, and I'll kind of jump right into it, I'll talk about, DeAndre Ayton. Mm-hmm. And Ayton is somebody who's obviously been in this league for a very long time here now. I think he's 7-8 years in. He's averaged a double-double, right? 16 and 10 for his career, nothing to sneeze at. But I think the notion of he himself said that he wanted to be this dominating type player, and we haven't really seen that. And the fact that that wasn't the case in his time in Portland, when they were truly kind of devoid of like superstar level talent at the time, is perplexing, I think, to say the very, very least. Now he's on a, basically he was bought out by the Blazer, is on the equivalent of a, veteran minimum deal with the LA Lakers in a situation where he could potentially thrive. And I think for DeAndre Ayton is like, it's do it or don't. And I'm going to ask you, CL, do you think DeAndre Ayton can do it to where he can be truly a dominating presence, or maybe not dominating, but, back to that maybe even 18 and 11 type presence? Or is he going to be a high level, high servers kind of journeyman center? I think we're kind of at that stage. He's 27, going to be 28. Is he just who he is, or is there a level where he can actually be a more significant presence on the basketball floor?
I think if he's playing with LeBron and with Luka, I don't think that's ever going to happen. However, I will say that the 18 and 11 that you're speaking to might be exactly what the Los Angeles Lakers needs for what he can contribute. I think the question isn't so much DeAndre Ayton's numbers as much as it is his attitude and his approach to the game of basketball. I'm not saying that lightly. I'm not saying that he is not deserving, to be a starting center. I'm not saying that, his game is not patterned for him to yield success on a team that he plays for. But I think to what you're talking about is there has to be a mantra, an attitude, a demeanor that if you're going to go out there and say you're denominating or dominating and stuff like that, like it has to resonate in how you play that game. Right? Like Nikola Jokic doesn't need to say anything, but you can clearly see how his presence and the way he goes about playing that game speaks to it. He could, his numbers, right? If Jokic has those same numbers, 18 and 11, more of the announcers will probably talk about how dominating a game Jokic had with those numbers. Those would be pedestrian numbers for him, by the way. So he's doing so much more beyond that. But even with those numbers, he'll still have some kind of an impact on the game that will speak volumes, not just for the game, but also moving forward. And I think that is what's always been lacking with DeAndre Ayton. And I don't know where all of that went awry, but you would have thought that he would have picked up on that playing next to Devin Booker, playing with Chris Paul, and having an opportunity to win an NBA championship when he was playing with the Phoenix Suns. And so that, to me, I think is what stands out more than anything. So I don't see it with DeAndre Ayton. No matter where you put him on there, I'm just hoping that the numbers will translate to be successful with the team he plays with, but not something where he is the person that we perceive him to be as, dominating.
I feel that. I mean, yeah, he could be a guy who statistically who gets there, but it doesn't have the impact that, you would think it would for somebody. So like, where he's at 16 and 11 for the most part for his career, or 16.4, 10 and a half, well over 55% shooting from the floor, only a block, for that. So you want him to be more impactful defensively.
Right. There's no fear factor.
Yeah. But yeah, I think DeAndre Ayton is more or less exactly who he's been. A guy who can get you some numbers here and there, but maybe the presence isn't what it is. So yeah, I'm agree with you on, I think it's going to be a don't on DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah. Don't.
All right. Want me to lead it on? I'll continue to keep it pushing.
Yes, sir.
So the next guy I have on my list is from the Houston Rockets. And let's just go ahead and bring him up here. Jabari Smith Jabari, it was interesting because the first game of the NBA season, he is on the NBA on NBA and NBA. I get this wrong. NBA on NBC/Peacock telecast, and he joins it. And he joins the broadcast. He's like, "Yeah, man, I want to be, the most improved player this year. In addition to trying to win a championship, now that Durant's on the roster." So this is year 4. He's gotten his extension already. I think of anybody we're talking about the biggest extension, I think it's 5 years, $122 million. So that's pretty extensive, has him locked in, if you will, at least to the money until 2031. And is he somebody who's going to show as a most improved type player? He can shoot the 3. He can defend. He has size. And I'd like to give him some credit, but my problem here is, and I'll see if you agree with me, I'm not quite sure I know what doing it for Jabari Smith is right now. And because he's already gotten the bag, I don't know where it is for him to go. Like I said, he says he wants to be most improved player. So maybe that's, is he in that conversation? Maybe that's the measuring stick this year. But is he going to be something more than, a 14 to 15 point per game guy? Can he get his rebounds up into the 7 or 8 range while still shooting, above, 40% from 3, which is obviously very valuable? Your thoughts on Jabari Smith? Because I like him. I'm just not sure what doing it looks like for him.
Yeah, so if we're talking about Jabari Smith being most improved player, that is great for Jabari Smith and also great for the Houston Rockets and what the future may hold as far as them continuing to be a upside potential great team, maybe in the conversation of, finals contenders, right? However, I'm still standing on that hill that the road to the championship for the Houston Rockets, getting them to that NBA Finals, is more predicated on Amen Thompson than it is Jabari Smith. And the reason why I say this is because Jabari Smith now will have so much more opportunity for him to show us what he's capable of now that Fred VanVleet is gone. On the flip side of it, however, because Fred VanVleet is gone, to your point, I don't know what version of Jabari Smith is going to be contributory to the success of the Houston Rockets. We've already seen that the path to the Houston Rockets offensively is feeding the ball to Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant's going to eat. Alfred Sengun is going to eat. Amen Thompson, I think if he becomes that ball distributor, he may be able to be Jabari Smith's saving grace. So my big question is, what will Jabari Smith contribute to the table that will enable us to continue to talk about the Houston Rockets? And if Jabari Smith is not going to contribute from a rebounding perspective, if he's not contributing from a defensive perspective to keep the Houston, because I'm already seeing that the Houston Rockets may wind up taking a step back defensively. So while they garnered all of this offensive weaponry, if they're not playing the same level of defense they played last year, this is a moot point about whether or not the Rockets are going to get to the finals. So I think it behooves a Jabari Smith that with all that athleticism and that ability to play above the rim, it has got to translate on those 50-50 balls. It's got to translate on his defensive prowess and awareness. He's got to be the guy that helps Alfred Sengun and establish that presence in the front court. And I don't know if whether or not he's in a mode to do that, because to your point, he got the bag. And the first thing that he's talking about being most improved sounds like more offensive contributions than it is defensive.
I mean, that's what the most improved usually is. It's like, hey, now I score more points because I had more opportunity. But is there truly going to be more opportunity with the men's ascension, no pun intended, and, KD on the roster, even with Fred VanVleet being out of the lineup for this year? So I don't know that we're going to get our answer in terms of him being able to do it this year specifically, but I thought his comments about wanting to be most improved was really, really.
I mean, and I applaud him, because maybe that in and of itself is challenging himself to really step up this year, because again, he's been a misnomer to me. You know what I'm saying? And we're going to start having those conversations with guys like him. And we'll start having conversations like guys like DeAndre Ayton. And remember, we did that with Evan Mobley. We did that with Jaren Jackson Jr. So I hope it happens a lot sooner than later, because if it's later for a guy like Jabari Smith, I don't see him where he continues to fit in that picture where they're going to continue to keep throwing him out there and he's not actually contributing on a consistent basis for what the Rockets need to be contenders.
Yeah, I mean, he still has the chip on the shoulder from not being the number one pick. Clearly, the Orlando Magic made the right decision, and not that Jabari is a bad guy or a bad player. He's clearly not, but he wasn't the number one pick, in that draft. Still a lot of runway on his career to become, even more impactful than we've seen. But I do kind of question, with the other guys kind of already ahead of him in the pecking order, can he do it in the role? Can he be a star in the role that he's being asked to right now? Or does he need to be on another team or roster to truly fulfill what he might think is number one pick potential, talent, and putting up those types of numbers? So let's see what on Jabari Smith Jr. for the Houston
One
Rockets.
thing I want to add, and I think this is going to also kind of be the running theme as well, too, Shaw, with a couple of the other guys that we're going to talk about, especially the one at the very end. You guys stay tuned with us. Basketball IQ. And guys like Jabari Smith with that level of athleticism and what he contributes. Again, we're going to be talking about a few guys in a few moments that all of them, I think if you're talking about them getting ahead, I'm challenging them to step up their basketball IQ, because I think that goes a long way for what they can potentially give you and teams that they're playing for. If they're still at that same mentality about it's all about the scoring the points, and they're not positioned properly, they're not reading those screens and those pick and rolls properly and things of that nature, we're going to be having the same conversations where there's our quote unquote empty calorie numbers for what they're getting compensated for.
All right. Let's move on to the Miami Heat, and two guys who I've been speaking about. This is our only duo, if you will, from the same team. But we're going to talk about Jaquez Jr. and Nikola Jovic. Now, in the case of Jovic, he's been able to secure his deal. A lot of people weren't sure if Miami was going to make the investment, but he got a 4-year, $62.4 million extension, from his rookie deal, and is now in Miami, presumably for the foreseeable future. Jaquez, on the other hand, is in year 3, where year 1 was really good. Last year was not so great. We spoke about this on our show, where he's actually spoken to psychologists and things of that nature. It's like, hey, you know what? Some of my struggles last year were on the mental side. And so he's off to a decent start here in the 2 games that Miami's played as we've recorded. But he's somebody who I think Miami's saying, hey, is he truly a part of our long-term future? Or should we be looking to package him because he does have some talent? But also remember, he came in as an older rookie, playing all those years at UCLA. Jovic and Jaquez Jr., I think, are 2 really interesting players who truly, like everyone here, has shown flashes at times, but hasn't gone out there and captured the moment and the minutes for Spoelstra to say, you know what, here's your 30 minutes a night, no matter what's happening. I think Jovic is probably a little bit closer along, but also, having, I guess, maybe the 1 extra year in, so to speak, but also the notion of, he played really well in Eurobasket, right? And he's been able to kind of step up in some of his roles there. While Jaquez Jr., I feel has maybe a more complete game, can do more things, has more tools at his disposal, but not sure if he does any of those things well enough. Again, that rewards him consistency in minutes. But I like both guys. So I think both of these guys will be able to do it to a certain level, but I don't know if they'll be able to do it on the Miami Heat, especially with so many players on that roster. Your thoughts on either one of those guys?
Listen, I completely agree with you. I think they can do it with any other team that they're playing for. I just don't know if they're going to be able to do it for the Miami Heat, which is a shame, because I think the Miami Heat should very much lean into what the culture brings out of them, which is next man up mentality and depth by 1,000 cuts, right? You could actually have a very extensively deep team if those guys are contributing, and I think on a consistent basis. That may be the challenge. And to your point, we talked about this with Eric Spoelstra, and his revelations, his evolution as a coach. Maybe there's a little bit more patience now being exhibited to give these guys the opportunities for them to show some consistency. But I think if the Miami Heat are planning to be a contending team, those guys are going to have to do it, because then if not, the Miami Heat don't. And so I'd be interested to see how much they lean into this, because to your point, Jaime could be he's like that 5'2" player. And I talked about, Drew Holiday some years ago about how that guy could just do everything well. But the one thing that you need him to do when it matters the most, it doesn't seem to execute. It doesn't come off. And I think he finally found himself playing next to a guy like Giannis and everything like that, not Giannis, when he played next to Anthony Davis, where I think it clicked, right? Where his ability to then now focus on being a point guard, being a leader, showing you what he could do defensively, leaning into those things. It elevated him to a point that the next destination he goes to, he helps win a championship. Then the next destination he goes to, he helps win a championship. And that just doesn't become a thing. So I'm wondering if this is what's going to happen with Jaime, more so than Jokic, because I think Jovic is going to be, a solid front court player. I just don't know if he's going to be a starter, but we'll see. But I think if you're the Heat, you embrace that and let that help be a part of the depth that the Heat sorely need, especially now what happened to Rozier. But they sorely need that depth for them to be competitive in the East.
Yeah, I think Jovic, because he can shoot the three right now better than Jaquez can, and just has a little bit more size, so presumably can play 3, 4, 5. I think they have Jaquez playing maybe 2, 3, and 4. So they both provide versatility. And there's a lot of reasons for Heat fans to be excited about both of them. You just want to see a level of consistency. And now we will understand or get to see if those guys can carve out those minutes here, especially when they're going with Hero out. Obviously now the Rozier thing as well too. Kelly Ware is also biting for minutes here too. So there's a lot of guys in the way per se. But I have confidence in these guys. But like I said before, I don't know if they'll be able to do it to the same level of that actual potential on this Miami Heat roster. Maybe one of these guys gets moved, I think, at some point. All right, going to move on and not spend too much time on this, because, Mr. Jonathan Kuminga has been talked about.
You just don't like this. He's like, I don't want to say much. I don't want to waste my time talking about it.
I'm just saying, at this point, we all know the Kuminga story. So he gets the 2-year extension, $48.5 million, gives him some flexibility, gives the Golden State Warriors some flexibility as well. Kuminga, to start off the year, has, I think, played really good basketball, fitting into the Warriors' overall ethos, even doing some playmaking and not just trying to score himself. And if this is the Kuminga we're going to get, I've said, hey, I'll be happy to eat my words because I just haven't been the biggest Kuminga guy. So I'll turn it over to you. Your thoughts on Jonathan Kuminga. Will he be able to do it in Golden State, or is he destined to do it somewhere else?
Yeah, well, I mean, he can do it, but this isn't on Kuminga. This is on Steve Kerr, flat out, period. End of story. If Steve Kerr cannot figure out a way to maximize what Jonathan Kuminga does, that should be the indictment on Steve. Not an indictment on his legacy, his career as being a great head coach, but he just can't get it right with that player. You know what I'm saying? And so as far as I'm concerned, I easily see Kuminga can do this if there is confidence in allowing him to do it. And if there is no confidence, then what was the point of giving him that contract? Because you just didn't want to see egg on your face. You know what I'm saying? Because you couldn't stand letting him go elsewhere. And I think the detriment of the.
I mean, hold on, let me interrupt. It's like maybe they gave him the deal so that he could do it to be ultimately moved, right? So do it so maybe he's the bridge to a bigger piece.
But then you can't undercut your move by allowing Steve Kerr to keep sabotaging the ability for him to contribute in any meaningful way. You know what I'm saying?
So good. Kerr's letting him play. He's letting him.
Okay, so far so good. Listen, your confidence in Kuminga is about the same as my confidence in Steve Kerr getting Kuminga's playing minutes and decision-making process right. I'm not questioning what he does for everyone else. Butler, Curry, Green, Peyton, all of them. He gets them right with all of his veterans. When it comes to these young, talented dudes, it always – and listen, look at where most of these other young guys are now playing now, right? Yeah. They're all in other places. And I just think that this becomes a trend. Again, I don't want to belabor the point because we got one more other guy that I know that you want to meaningfully have a conversation to. But when it comes to Kuminga, I think he can do it. I just don't know whether or not he could do it underneath Steve Kerr.
All right. Well, let's move on to our last two guys. But the first guy of the two is Bennedict Mathurin in Indiana. So interestingly enough, did not get a contract extension despite knowing that he was going to have a much larger role this year with Tyrese Halliburton being out. Mathurin has suffered a shoulder injury, I believe it was, that I saw, in game 2 of their season. So, at the time of this recording, not sure what his status will be, going into next week. Hopefully it's not
making the Pacers look like very smart people.
Well, but maybe because Mathurin was hooping, right? He's averaging over 25 a game in the time, the 2 games that we've seen thus far, and is trying to rebound and even doing a little bit more play creation right now. I kind of like Mathurin. I like his moxie, so to speak, but a lot of people have said he's also like the East Coast version of Jonathan Kuminga. So in terms of like what he feels like is entitled to him to some degree, but with the Pacers not giving him a deal, I'm sure he's going to be incentivized in essence to really perform this year. I think he's going to get a chance to do it statistically, but will it mean wins or competitiveness for the Pacers throughout the course of the year? That remains to be seen on my part. But I know you're kind of a Mathurin guy. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah. I'm a Mathurin guy because I just believe that he has all of the tools necessary for him to be a meaningful contributory impact player, right? I mean, realistically, if he had his head on straight, like, and stayed focused at the task at hand at times, he actually would be in conversations of 6 man in a year. But he never stays consistent with the way he does things, and it doesn't help that he's constantly injured. His timing of injuries, unfortunately, I think has undermined his ability that he should have already been a mainstay for the Indiana Pacers. So I completely understand why the Pacers are hedging their bets on this. And if it's forcing Mathurin to hone in and really be like, yo, I got to be about being on the court. Like, it's unfortunate what happened to him with this injury, right? Like, to get that kind of productivity in the first 2 games. But we've also seen, like, last year, he started off coming out the gates hot, and then had this cold stretch where it was just like nowhere to be found. And then the only time that we were talking about him was when he was getting technicals, or he essentially was just a non-factor during certain periods, during certain stretches of the NBA of the season with the Pacers. So I think he's capable of doing it. I don't want to say that he's not capable of doing it. But what do they say? Your best ability is your availability. And if his availability is going to undermine that, we'll see what version of Mathurin comes out back after this injury, if he's not going to be out there on the floor. And then he's got to make sure that he is keeping his head on right. Like, he has got to be fully in tune. The Pacers need a fully engaged Mathurin, not the one that's just a pest, to everybody on the court, or basically a self-destructive, player on the basketball court that's not contributing anything to Carlisle's cause, because he's got enough to juggle with, but he can't juggle an inconsistent Mathurin.
I think we've talked about this before, but as we've mentioned these guys in back-to-back ways, I'd love to do who you got, Kuminga versus Mathurin, and just kind of figure out, as those comparisons have been made, basically East and West Coast versions kind of each other, almost doppelgangers, in terms of like how they see themselves and maybe some stuff they battle with. But Mathurin has had a much longer, I don't want to say that word. I'd say it has been more trust, I think, placed in him throughout the times. But again, his injury history has been very problematic, I think, for Indiana, especially in that first 2 years ago in that series against the Boston Celtics. If he would have been available, although there was a sweep, I think, the Indiana Pacers would have had a lot more options. And Mathurin was immense at times in the NBA Finals as well, too. And Indiana's offense seemed to struggle a little bit. All right,
I think to your point, Shaw, this is where Tyrese Halliburton, I think, it really comes into play in being a mentor to, Bennedict Mathurin. Like, while Halliburton is off the floor, if he is a voice in his ear and is emphasizing what he could potentially help give the Pacers, Mathurin's contributions, I just want people to don't sleep on Mathurin if he is on the court and he is productive. When he is productive, he is about as dangerous as a player that you'll see out there on that basketball court. But again, at times, it's when he takes himself out mentally in games that hurts him, and it also hurts the team.
All right, final one here. And this is a guy who I think a lot of people are we waiting on him because he's got so much.
Patiently waiting for attractive explorer.
He's got the athletic ability. He can jump out the gym, seems to be like the natural scorer. But Shaedon Sharpe, from the Portland Trail Blazers, should have a presumably really great opportunity right now. I think is penciled in as a starting wing in Portland and getting some opportunities, to get the minutes. Also has had some stuff with injuries as well, too, similar to some of the guys that we've spoken about, but needs to be more than like this slasher elite level leaper with inefficiency in terms, when he's scoring from the floor. And is he going to lock in defensively in a way that now Thiago Splitter would want to say, you know what, go out here, here's 30 minutes a night, no matter what the situation is. He got a contract. So I thought it was really interesting that the Blazers said, you know what, we're going ahead and give you this money here now, despite not really seeing everything that I think I would have wanted to see if I was a general manager or governor of this team. But 4 years, 90 for a guy who is often injured. I'm not sure if it's incentive laden or not, but your thoughts on Shaedon Sharpe's overall potential. Will Shaedon Sharpe be a guy who actually does it, or will he won't do it in Portland Trail Blazers?
I'll give you an answer with a question. Would you take Shaedon over Kuminga?
I would not. I would not.
Okay, so wait, you said you would not take Shaedon over Kuminga?
I would not. I would prefer to have Jonathan Kuminga over Shaedon Sharpe. Yes.
Okay, well then there you go. Then I think you've answered my question, right? Like in the sense that I think if Jonathan Kuminga was playing for the Portland Trailblazers, what would his numbers actually look like, with that roster around him, rather than Kuminga playing around the veterans? And Shaedon Sharpe has got this prime opportunity for him to be a standout. And these things are just not translating. Listen, we've often talked about how teams, it's hard to find athleticism, right? Like you just can't teach kids that are just basically jumping out their shoes. But what good is it if it's not controlled or harnessed or focused on having an impact in the game that you're playing or against the teams that you're playing against? And I think we're running into that problem with Shaedon Sharpe. Like I hope that this is the year he figures it out. I hope that the guys that are playing around him see that potential, are putting him in a position where he is, helping to elevate himself to that next level, because clearly it's difficult for him to do that on his own, and listen, we're not saying that he's not capable. That's the reason why you have point guards. That's the reason why you have, guys that play multiple positions. I think ultimately that's what's going to need to happen for Shaedon Sharpe. Like he cannot get by with the athleticism anymore. Like at some point now, this has to translate where it's either meaningful rebounding, meaningful assists, meaningful 3-point shooting, whatever it is. It just can't be because it looks like it can it can hop out of the gym. It's got to translate to something where it's meaningful statistics and numbers that are elevated for what he does for his role, playing that 2-3 stretch.
Yeah, and let me correct myself. He only missed 10 games last year, so I guess he's not injury prone. I think he was battling some things here and there. But the year before he missed a lot of games, but played 80 games in his rookie season. But we're seeing the 3-point percentage kind of like trend down in a league that obviously values shooting, especially from the wing position. And if he's not getting to the line or, getting fouled on a regular basis, you just see a lot of inefficiency in terms of his scoring and those numbers. And he doesn't really do a lot, on the play creation side of the basketball, or really getting, blocks and steals on a regular basis. Not a bad passer. I think he's a capable passer and a ball mover within the offense. So I think that's something too that we could probably see another level there where he does do it. But he's somebody who I want to kind of keep my eye on right now. I'd hedge my bets on probably the no that he won't, at least not for what we perceive his potential to be. So if we scale things down and just say, hey, this is a guy who will be a high volume shooter but low efficiency scorer, there's places for that, but not necessarily for a team that's trying to win in Portland. I hope I'm wrong, because I really think he's a commendable young man with a lot of God-given talent, and just trying to harness that in a way that puts him on the right trajectory for ultimate success.
I don't want to categorize him, but I feel like his trajectory is one that could be very similar to DeAndre Hunter. Like if things don't work out where he is showing that he's a capable starter, whether it's a good team or a bad team, then I'd like to think that he has a role where, he can come off the bench and he can contribute and provide significant minutes, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I also believe as well too that it masks this dependency and this need for him to be someone that's going to be out there, that's going to absorb a boatload of minutes, and then we're leaning on him to shoot the three when he doesn't shoot the three ball well, right? Like maybe when he's playing with the second units, there's more opportunity for him to allow that athleticism to really help accentuate what he can give you. Because I know that that's what we wound up doing for a couple of guys, and that's the reason why I mentioned DeAndre Hunter. While DeAndre Hunter, I'm sure some people still believe that he could be starting. No, I mean, if he's thriving on a roster that needs depth and needs athleticism in their second unit, and he's been given the floor essentially to go and do that, right, he will have more of an impact for the Cleveland Cavaliers than he will be playing for the Atlanta Hawks or playing for the Memphis Grizzlies or any other team that's going to assume to start him, because with that athleticism, you can't do anything if it's not needed for what the first unit is doing. So that's what I'm looking at with Shaedon Sharpe. If this is the year that we don't see this incremental improvement to what he is bringing to the table, you have to start asking the question whether or not he's better suited, not to be off the bench, but to be better suited with a unit that's going to allow that athleticism to accentuate. It's why we had this conversation with Jonathan Kuminga. You know what I'm saying? And where the Golden State Warriors are with what you're trying to do with Jonathan Kuminga, I think you can have the same argument about the Portland Trailblazers with Shaedon Sharpe.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, to kind of close on. We love 3-point shooting, and maybe like that shot isn't for everybody. But he shot 47%. I'm looking it up now. He shot 47% between 10 and 16 feet last year. It's just not a shot that he took a lot of, right? I think only it's showing here like maybe 14% of his shot diet was within that range, but he shot it well. So maybe more of that, and then you can kind of live, especially because if he can do the one dribble pull up, no one's going to really block his shot just because he's got elite level athleticism. And if he can hit those instead of just trying to like settle for threes, maybe he can be kind of like in the DeRozan-ish type mold. You know what I mean? You can really just kind of knock things down there, and have a really, really great career, as a scorer and slasher as well too.
But this is the reason why you say, like they say all the time, get to your spot, right? Yeah. Get to your spots, get there first, right? Control that. And then if they're basically forcing you to have to go out there and shoot the three, okay, then that's what you got to do until, you adjust or make them adjust again. But I think more times often, and this is what gets exposed when we talk about the NBA, guys choose to go and take that shot because they think that shot is what's going to work for them, and they don't stay within the framework of getting what has gotten them to that point already. They get away from it. And then because of it, those numbers dip. You don't make the shot that you're now taking that risk doing, and then it just all goes to hell. So, to your point, I would like to see Shaedon make sure that you're executing at a high percentage that shot, that 10 to 16 feet within, and then expanding itself out if you want to, because that's what they're forcing you to do. And if you can make it, great, but impose your will to make sure that you get a majority of those shots in before you just flank out and start shooting threes and not making a high percentage of it.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap. I mean, that's our list between Jonathan Kuminga, Jabari Smith, Bennedict Mathurin, DeAndre Ayton, Jovic, and Jaquez Jr. over in Miami, Shaedon Sharpe. And I actually left one guy off, but we're running out of time, so I'm going to go and kind of keep it pushing anyway. But
he's on your hit list.
Say that again.
He's on your hit list, right?
Yeah, I got one more, and maybe we can have some conversation later on. But
this ain't gonna be the only time we do this. This is actually pretty good. I like this. So we're gonna wind up having to do this again. Listen, The Wire had 5 seasons. They didn't just have one wire.
No, for sure. The iterations of this, but we're trying to celebrate the game and celebrate players, and look at these guys with an open mind, but a critical eye, in terms of like, hey, what is their path for success? So let us know what your thoughts are, or some guys that you're waiting on, right? Who are you waiting on? Hey, man, I wish they would just do it already, or don't, and so that maybe their teams and then maybe even fans can kind of get off the proverbial bandwagons if there is such a thing for those guys. So I think this was a fun one, MyG. Definitely enjoyed that. And hopefully we can have more conversations about what's happening on the floor instead of what's going on off of it.
Absolutely. Once again, man, we appreciate you and yours for hopping on board with us this week for The Baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. We do. We will catch up with you next time.